fellow Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, Jordan Watkins at Big 75 Fella. Jordan, I know you're a bit down, after yesterday's game. Other than that, how we doing?
Yeah, the voice is shot. I'm sure everybody can tell just listening to me. But no, things are good. It's now is what it is. Obviously, Tampa lost last night. The Saints lost. You're still right there in the thick of everything. So, I'm trying to think bigger picture with all of this, but that was a tough one to lose the other day.
That was a tough one. Yeah, and we're gonna get into it, guys. Obviously, on today's Trench Talk for Week 6, we got a lot to get to. Most notably, the offense once again holding this back, the defense holding things down, and of course, we'll bring you a quick message from our sponsor, BetOnline.ag, folks. Football is back, and BetOnline is your number one information source for all your sports wagering info with all the up-to-the-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns that you need. You can get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals from the NFL, college football, and more at your fingertips with BetOnline's real-time updates on statistics, news, and odds. From Week 1 all the way to the college football playoff and Super Bowl, BetOnline gives you access to the best football promotions and contests available anywhere online. So what are you waiting for? Head to that website today, betonline.ag, or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Just remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Jordan, we're gonna start with the defense because we're trying to keep things positive to open these shows typically. But really, I just want to open up with the overall positive of that on a down-to-down basis. And of course, this is cheap. This is just talk. Obviously they didn't win the game. The Falcons outplayed the Commanders down to down. Like, there's no question. And once again, it was just a series of mistakes. And this was basically just last week's game, except this time the Falcons didn't manage to pull it out despite the mistakes. This time they lost. So on the defensive side, you see the 24 points and you're like, wow, this is like one of the worst games that this defense has played all season. And then when you look into it, you realize one score was basically an extension of like a, punt return snafu that got the ball down to like the 11. And then another one was after a turnover where Washington only had to drive like 20 yards. But the Falcons did also, legitimately allow another touchdown. But the stats show that the Falcons more or less shut down the Commanders outside of that. They completely shut them down in the second half. Outside of that one drive in the third quarter, they held the Commanders to under 200 yards, 121 net passing yards, 72 rushing yards, 3.9 yards per play, and 2 of 10 on third down. I believe both of those conversions came on the first drive of the game, which was the field goal drive. And 5 sacks, So the defense, once again, they get punched in the mouth. They come back extremely strong after halftime, and they keep this thing to a level where not only was it winnable, it should have been won. There were multiple opportunities to do so. So yeah, I mean, where do you want to start first? Should we start with the trenches because they did come alive today? The pass rush finally. I mean, pressure had been there, but the sacks finally materialized today.
Yeah, no, I think we can and should, and the reason why, we saw a lot of changes in the front seven this week. The report came out from practice a few days before the game. Arnold Ebiketie, D'Angelo Malone taking reps at inside backer. And again, when I first saw that, I was like, okay, that makes sense. We don't have a lot of depth there. So if somebody goes down, helps to have someone that's, familiar with what's going on. But you saw in this game, Ebiketie took a good amount of snaps there, especially in pass rush situations. They brought him on blitzes and games and stunts, and it worked out. So finding a different way to use his athleticism, right, that we've been talking about, we've coveted, and that was really, really cool to see. Another thing I love, obviously, as you know, Kevin, I've been screaming about this for weeks. Calais Campbell lines up inside. He gets sack number 100 as a result of it. Congrats to him. Then the Dirty Bird was sick after. I loved it. Yeah. So no, there were a lot of good things there. If I had to be nitpicky about the front, though, there were times where the lack of edge rush, and it was better, right?
Mm-hmm.
You saw, but Dupree had his moments. He had a great get off. And of course, speaking of the front, I have to give my well wishes to Charles Leno and his family. Obviously, they lost their little daughter, so he didn't play in the game for the Commanders. So well wishes to his family. I know that's got to be tough, but Sam Howell made a couple of plays in this game by escaping the pocket, and part of that happens because you still haven't figured out fully the edge rush component of this pass rush. So that would be my nitpick part of it. But no, I mean, like you said, overall, solid performance by the defense. I think that punt return, like you said, it was by Jamison Crowder and super short field. At that point, it's like, okay, let's see. Let's hope and pray this defense holds them to 3 here instead of 6. But at the end of the day, and I know we're talking about the defense, and so this is more of an offensive point. The offense has to help this defense out, right? We saw glimmers and glimpses of what the offense could be last week. You even saw it, in my opinion. You saw some of it, during this game.
Absolutely.
And so, what I mean by that, and of course, if you've been a Falcons fan for a while, you saw it in the Super Bowl. Defenses do get tired. They get worn out. So you keep them on the field so much and so often and so frequently, bad things will happen. Now, give credit again to the defense because they had to deal with a lot of short fields, like you said. But after what, we have to stop coming on this show and saying this week after week. We have to stop it. So it's got to change offensively. But, again, 24 points. It is what it is. The yards, obviously there's a big yard differential in this game, but that also is going to happen when you have short fields. It's not like the Commanders had a long way to go for most of their drives. But it's like I said, it's just tough. You got to do a better job containing the quarterback, especially these young mobile guys, and edge rush is going to be the way that gets done.
Yeah. And we love Calais Campbell on this program. We never slander the man, but it's becoming pretty clear that he's just limited if he has to get out in space. He's a liability in space. I think in his prime, he was like the rare man at his size that could actually do that, like could actually play on the end at 6'8", 290 essentially. At this point, it's ugly sometimes when he has to try to get out there, and he gives maximum effort. Like, I'm not questioning his effort one bit. And sometimes he's still able to push guys out of bounds and force the play out, but he's just not a plus out there. And I think at this point, the Falcons need him on the edge because they just don't really have a lot of trusted guys there yet. So the hope is that maybe Ebiketie develops, maybe Zach Harrison develops a little bit more. Bud Dupree has started to come on, definitely. So hopefully he can be one of your guys. But Campbell as a run defending edge is absolutely fine. Because most of the time he's just going to crash down, take out the tight end and the tackle, and that's sort of his job on that play. There's supposed to be a linebacker, coming down outside that gap to seal it off. And he's done that really well, and he's continued to do that well. But, if he's the end man and the quarterback has a run option out there and he has to try to chase down the quarterback, unless he has a terrific angle, it's going to be really difficult for him. And we saw Sam Howell take advantage of that in this game. We've seen running backs take advantage when they were able to get outside. And, I think he's still a very talented pass rusher. He just probably needs to play on the interior, which is what, Baltimore was doing with him. But I recognize that the Falcons did promise him that he would get to play edge, but at a certain point, we may have to split the snaps more. It's not like he can't play edge, but in pass rushing situations, he's still clearly a very good interior pass rusher. I mean, that sack is proof of it. He dominated that rep. So,
well, I mean, it's just like in baseball when you have a player that gets older, and it kind of changes now since there's a universal DH, but in the past, when it's, hey, this guy's really good, still offensively, not as mobile, whether it's like third baseman, corner outfielder, not as mobile as they once were, what do? Put them at first base. right? To limit how much they have to move around and run. I think it's the same thing for Calais. Like you said, it's not that he isn't good anymore. Look, Father Time gets everybody.
He's like
Like
38
it
years
gets
old.
it
He's the
gets
oldest
everyone.
defensive player in
Yeah,
the NFL. Yeah.
exactly. It gets everyone. And so if you limit some of his responsibilities in terms of, again, that pursuit, contain, things like that, and put him on the inside, he shows you if he only has to go a short amount of space, he's got you, right? So just situations where if it's obvious pass situation, right, 3rd and long, things like that, I'd love to see him on the inside more. Or even if the Falcons want to do like a 5-man front.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say a 3-4 look,
yeah,
put him at,
exactly
5 tech or something in that alignment.
Well, or even reduce them down, have
Like
a nose and
4-eye
2
or
3 techs.
yeah, or a 3
Yeah,
tech.
have
Yeah,
2 3 techs. So he's one. So you can still have Grady, David Onyemata, and Calais out there at the same time. Find something to work with that. But I know at the same time, obviously, a big part of that is what do you have on the outside?
Right.
So I said Vikings, if you want to keep losing, that's all I'm saying.
It's just like I feel like Danielle Hunter would be like the last Infinity Stone for this defense. Like it's just like you have this great secondary that's really coming together with a plus nickel corner and D Alford. AJ Terrell is AJ Terrell, and then Jeff Okudah looks like what we hoped for. Like this is if you were hoping, like this is like you were hoping for this, like and this is like the best realistic outcome. Where like I think according to PFF, he's actually like outplayed Okudah over the last 2 games, which is, it's PFF, so take it with a grain of salt. But still, like he's playing at like a starting outside cornerback level where he's actually an impact player, which is what people have been waiting to see, obviously, from him since he was drafted, in the top 5. So I'm happy for him on that. But you got Jesse Bates on the back end. So, I mean, maybe you could say the safety spot next to Bates could use an upgrade. But the linebackers look good. Nate Landman has been, an upgrade over Troy Anderson, which, again, isn't necessarily shocking that he would be immediately, like, better. But I think it's not even meant as, like, a slight towards Troy Anderson, but, like, Nate Landman has come in and played, like, one of the better linebackers in the NFL. Yeah. Like, next to Caden Ellis, who we know is already a pretty good linebacker. So, like, he's been the better linebacker even between him and Caden Ellis at times. So that's not meant as a slight towards Troy Anderson at all. It's more like a, wow, you just found this UDFA guy, and we've talked about Nate Landman to death, so we're not going to give you guys another Nate Landman sermon, but put some respect on Nate Landman's name. But they get that top edge rusher in here where they can now make Calais Campbell a part-time edge rusher, part-time interior player, and I think you just level up the entire defensive line at that point to where I think that's the missing piece. Now, who knows if they'll be able to get it done, but I really, like, if they can get this done for a second-round pick, they should do it tomorrow. Like, if they can get this done for a second-round pick, whether they want, they can't trade the Jaguars pick yet because we're not sure which one it'll be, right, whether it's a third or a second, but so they could probably only trade their own second. But they can afford to not only make the move, but they can afford to give Hunter his big contract next year. And they could even trade for him and immediately extend him to fix the cap space issues that will present. So if, like, I don't really see a downside. Like, they need that top edge rusher based on where we think they're going to pick in the mid-teens, probably at the lowest. You're not going to have the chance to really get a guy you're expecting to be as good as Danielle Hunter anytime soon at pick 15 or later, hopefully. And they have the money, and you're not going to get a top edge rusher like this on the open market.
Yeah,
you can only preach so much. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, the thing too, like you said, with the draft, it's always hit or miss. You're shooting for a crap shot. And that's why I'm always going to be in the boat of, if you can get the proven commodity over the hope, you go for the proven. And here's the thing, obviously the Vikings won yesterday against the Bears 19-13. So that changes things because now you have 2 games, I think 2 weeks left before the trade deadline, which is on Halloween. And just looking at the Vikings schedule, they could go 0-2, right? They have San Francisco next week at home as a Monday night game, and they have to go to Green Bay. But the way the NFC looks right now is they're going to feel like they're still in it, even if it isn't for the division. I think we all agree that the Lions are probably going to take the NFC North, but the wild card is still very wide open. And this is where, again, I think looking at it from a different angle, the Falcons' loss to the Commanders also hurts in this regard too. Mm-hmm. You allowed that bubble of the wild card to look even muddier, right? Instead of pulling apart from it, not even just from the NFC South. Like, don't get me wrong, I still NFC South still in mind, but I'm just saying, if you look at the playoff bubble completely, the more that you lose games like this, the more you let some of these other teams have belief. Oh yeah, see, we're still in it. And if you're still in it, why are you going to trade guys away? So just another, way to look at it too.
Yeah, no. And so we'll have to see how that develops, but the Vikings they beat the Bears without Justin Fields. Like, are you really feeling super good about that? You barely scraped by that Bears team without their quarterback. So it's maybe the Falcons did this for a lot of last year too, where they had delusions that they could still make the playoffs. So, and it led to them making some very poor decisions, which we're probably going to talk about here in a minute. But, yeah. So, I think if they lose to the 49ers, if they lose those next two games, then they're probably going to be sellers at that point. But who knows? Yeah. Who knows exactly what they'll do. And it may take more than a second to get Danielle Hunter given his age and production. He does have the injury history. That's really the only thing. But, if it's just a second, if that's the price, I would not hesitate, which probably means it's going to be more than that. So,
right. Yeah. Well, who knows? You see some of these, the trade market in the NFL has been very weird the last few years. Even going back to the Christian McCaffrey trade, when I saw what the Niners had to give up for him, I was like, wait, really? That's it for him? You look, it's not like for example, if you look at the NBA, whenever these superstars demand trades, you see how much you have to move, right? Damian Lillard goes to Milwaukee. You had to give up Drew Holiday, 2-3 other players, a pick, all these things. And then in the NFL, it's just okay, well, here's a 6th and a 5th for this guy that's been really good for 4 years. Okay. So it's just one of those things you can't tell. It could be a second. It also could be less, just based off of what I've seen. Even Randy Gregory this year just got traded for nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the market in the NFL is so weird, where I feel like, and this is just my guess, I'm sure the Vikings phone has been buzzing a lot the last few weeks. Do I think someone may have offered them a 2nd round pick? Possibly. Do I think that it would take let's just say nobody offered one, right? And it was the first call the Vikings got. Do I think it would take a 2nd round pick? I actually don't, based off how the NFL market has been lately, right? But we'll see. We'll see. But again, I said, us losing, them winning this past week definitely hurt the chances of that happening.
Yeah, at least not anytime soon. They're probably going to wait it out till the trade deadline, which was probably the most likely scenario anyway. But, we'll see. But at least at this rate, hopefully we'll get to see the Falcons get more snaps to Ebiketie, who, to his credit, look, had 2 weeks where he was getting more snaps and didn't have anything to show for it. This week, against a team that does give up a lot of sacks, to be fair, we knew this going in. He gets the 2 sacks and a hurry as well for 3 total pressures on just 9 pass rush snaps. So that's, a 33% pressure rate, which is pretty nuts. Now that's not likely to continue, but for comparison, Bud Dupree also had 2 sacks and 1 hurry, but he did it on 21 pass rush snaps in this game. So I think it's clear Ebiketie deserves more reps. They for no other reason than that they just don't really have anyone else. But I think they need to figure out if he can work in this scheme or not. And I don't see any reason that he can't work in this scheme as a pass rusher. It's more the run defending. And I don't think he's been a negative as a run defender. He's certainly not been like Calais Campbell as a run defender,
But
but
yeah, sure, yeah.
But like, when I scouted him, my thing was like, look, he's small. He does have good length. He's like 6'2.5", but he has over 34-inch arms, so the height doesn't hurt him as much as it would hurt a lot of guys.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just not. He can't carry that much more mass because of his frame. Like 6'2.5", you can't stack up to be 270 at 6'2.5". Like you're just not going to be able to keep your mobility at that size. Whereas a guy like Zach Harrison at like 6'7", he could get to 270.
Saw him get
sure.
in the action
Yeah.
this week too.
Yeah,
that was good to see.
Mm-hmm. So it's just tougher for him to put on that weight. But I thought he was an excellent pursuit player. I thought he was a great backside run defender. I thought he could set the edge decently well. He's just not a guy that's going to be able to take on offensive tackles and like win regularly in a run defense rep. Like it's just not really his game.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, it's going to be about your technique, right? Your hand placement, and like I said, using your long arms to not let offensive linemen get into you. And I think a perfect example of that is, you can look at one of his Penn State buddies down in Dallas. Micah Parsons might be an inch taller, right, than Ebiketie. And I think he bulked up this year to about 245, 250, somewhere in that range. So, it can be done. I mean, we've seen even smaller edges in the league before. Elvis Dumerville, I believe, was in the league for over a decade and was like 5'11".
Very unique player. Yeah, but
very very unique. And I'm not trying to say like because he did it, everybody can do it. No, he was very special. My point being though is that if you do have size limitations, I had him. Like I'm a tall guy, but I played on the interior to like 275. And you have so did Solomon Thomas, who I was with, and some other guys, and we had guys, these offensive linemen, even in college, are still 300, 310, 315. But if your technique is there, you can make up for it. So that's the thing for him that he's just got to keep improving on. I'm sure he is, and he's with the right guy, with Ryan Nielsen, who knows all about that. So he'll be okay.
Yeah, and I think people mistook my tweet about like saying that there's been a lot of talk about trading him. I don't think it's going to happen. If it was going to happen, it was going to happen in the offseason, as like they should trade him in the offseason. Like I'm just saying like don't think that he's going to get traded in season. If it's going to happen, I would be watching the offseason, particularly after free agency. If they go out and like maybe they do add Danielle Hunter and they sign another guy, then it's like, okay, well, are they really going to hold a spot for him? Or are they going to make the second round pick like the fourth guy on the depth chart, like long term, or are they going to try to flip him for picks? That would be more the situation where they would be looking.
Yeah, well, I think the sign of moving him to inside backer and they have production almost right away is would save him from that, in my opinion. Now D'Angelo Malone, that might be a different story because remember, like I said, he was the other guy that was moved inside, and we still haven't seen much of him. So
just special teams,
yeah, exactly. So he would be the guy that potentially we'll see what happens, but I think Ebiketie is going to be okay.
Yeah, I think so too. And for the record, for everyone that didn't follow in training camp, these guys like Ebiketie and Malone were doing these linebacker drills all through training camp as well. Like this is not a new development. So it's been ongoing that they would do coverage drills with the linebackers and they would go back and do pass rush drills with the edge guys. But I think they have a type, like, and Caden Ellis is a perfect example of this. Like they have a type of that sort of like bigger linebacker type that they want that guy to be versatile enough to play coverage and to rush. So for like the Caden Ellis, Nate Landman, Troy Anderson guys, they're going to have them learn how to rush. And for like the Arnold Ebiketie, D'Angelo Malone, Lorenzo Carters, they're going to have them learn how to cover. But they sort of, it's part of Nielsen's scheme. He wants to be aggressive and be able to send anybody. Like everyone should be a decent pass rusher. Everyone should stop the run, that sort of thing. And I think we'll see more and more of those wrinkles mixed in as everybody gets more comfortable. And, right now I think he's sort of keeping it a little bit more simple and because they don't want to have the coverage busts on the back end. Like when you get really exotic with your blitzes and who you're sending all over the place, everybody behind them has to be 100% on point or there's just going to be a massive hole in the zone. So, and even sometimes there's just going to be a hole in the zone anyway, because that's what happens when you rush extra guys. But I'm interested to see how that plays out long-term with both Ebiketie and Malone.
Well, that's what's so fun too, in my opinion, about Jeff Okudah being everything that we could have hoped for and then some, but then also D. Alford playing as well as he had this year. The more confidence that you have, to your point, the more confidence that you have on the back end of, they're going to be lock and point, the more you can experiment and go with things up front in the front seven and bring in certain guys in certain places. So I think you saw some of that right this week. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the secondary probably faced the best receiver that they've seen this year so far, talking about Terry McLaurin. And that's no disrespect to some other guys that we've seen this year, but Terry McLaurin is a dude, as we all know. And he got us a couple of times. Now, again, part of that too was also Sam Howell having the ability to extend plays by getting outside of the pocket. But I think that the more you go on the season, the more the good things that the secondary individually and as a group put on tape, the more you can trust we can gamble a little bit with these guys doing what they're doing on the back end. And you'll see it. Now, as a group, as the defensive group, I do want to say this. Probably and it wasn't a bad one per se, but probably the worst tackling game of the season.
Yeah, I would say so. And even then,
and that's what I'm saying. Like, I didn't want to say it was bad. It was okay, but
it's not great.
I think that was the most missed tackles I've seen this year. You saw that parlay into some bigger plays for the Commanders. But look, 7 missed tackles, I believe, as a defensive group, which again, too many. I know, like the team knows that, the defense knows it, the coaches know it. But I'll sit here and say, if 7 tackles is the most amount of tackles you miss in a game, I think we're pretty good.
You can live with that. You can live with that.
Yeah, exactly.
You shouldn't force like 3 missed tackles on one play,
Right.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's going to happen sometimes. Like, the defense is not going to be perfect every game. They were bound to have a game where they weren't as sharp. But like, even that, I struggled to call this like a bad game for them just because, like where that punt return ended up was literally the worst possible place. Like, it was at the 11. So they got a first down at the 1 after, like, I think it was like second down. They tackled him at the 1. They got the first down. It was first and goal from the 1. It's like, that is literally, you can't have a worse situation than that as a defense where they get a first down at the 1 yard line. I mean, because I think if not for that, there would have been a reasonable chance that they could have stuffed them on one more play at the 1 to bring up like a 4th and goal. But instead, first and goal at the 1. So not a whole lot of hope there to stop that. I mean, other than a miracle, but ultimately, it, especially in the second half, they have that one score that's basically set up and gift wrapped to them by Desmond Ridder. But and well, that's a good transition into that. Other than that, I think they played really well. But I did want to just shout out the defense one more time. That the Falcons are 3rd in pressure rate in the NFL at 26.6%, which is really good. I can't remember the last time we've been anywhere close to that. Now they're not very, I mean, they're like, I think have the 5th fewest sacks at 10, and that was after 5 this week. But I think what I'm trying to say is that's probably going to start to correct itself a little bit, because I think they're the only team in the top 10 that has fewer than 15 sacks. So maybe there's other things going on there that probably are to some extent, but they are getting a lot of pressure. So if you're not getting pressure at all, that's bad. At least they're getting pressure and starting to get a few sacks. But the other thing that I thought was interesting was that we expected this to be a pretty blitz-heavy scheme, and they're actually only blitzing on 19.7% of their snaps, which I think is like 18th or something like that. So they're actually a little bit below average in blitz rate, and they're still getting that pressure. So I think that means that they could even ratchet up the pressure more if they wanted to by sending those blitzes, because we know how talented guys like Caden Ellis are as a blitzer. So just there's some interesting tidbits after 6 games about where they sort of are as a pass rush, where they're, I think, better statistically in terms of the pressure rate than they've been on the stat sheet. And hopefully we'll start to see that continue to correct, because they have the guys.
Yeah. I mean, and again, we've talked about it in previous shows about the guys in the middle, right? David Onyemata is still 11th right now in terms of interior defensive lineman to pass rush win rate. Grady Jarrett, he slipped down a little bit, but he's still top 35, which I know usually if you think about it, it's like, that's not that good. But remember, every team usually is going to have 2 interior defensive linemen. So
2 starters. Yeah.
Let's just, 2 starters. So let's say 64, right? So he's in the top half of that still. So you have guys, especially on the interior, you can make that happen. And again, it's one of those things where I really do believe with what we've seen on this defense, especially on the back end, Ryan Nielsen, the secondary has more than earned Ryan Nielsen's trust to say, hey, we need to rely on you guys to hold up while we're blitzing. You can do it. You also have to give credit to the Falcons' run defense, because more times than not, they're getting teams behind schedule on first down or second down, because for the most part, this run defense isn't giving up a lot, especially in obvious run situations. So they're allowing, the secondary the chance to protect, and they're allowing the front to rush. I mean, again, it's every defensive meeting room you can ever go in, they'll say you have to earn the right to rush the passer.
Yeah.
And with what the Falcons are doing run defense wise, they are absolutely doing that.
Yeah, they have been, and that's great to see. And they have, after that 150-yard week 1 game to the Panthers, they've been much better against the run. I think they're now 11th in both yardage allowed and yards per carry allowed. They're at 3.7 yards per carry allowed now. So, much better there. And I think we all sort of expected that, given who Ryan Nielsen is and sort of what he preaches. But it's nice to see that definitely come together. And another great stat, Falcons are second in third down defense, which that is one of the sure signs of a good defense. They're second. They're allowing just a 31.1% conversion rate, and they've also faced a pretty high number of third downs, 74 third downs. They've only allowed 23 conversions. And then in terms of the red zone rate, they're also very good. They're 6th in red zone touchdown rate. They only allow a 43.8% touchdown rate in the red zone. So those are 2, further down stats not a lot of people check that show whether you're a good defense in specific situations. And those are 2 of the most important ones, certainly. Yeah, so definitely. They've been everything we could hope for through 6 games. And I think at this point we know it's not a mirage, certainly. But we should probably, start talking about things that are less fun in terms of the offense here, which, like,
oh boy,
I watched it again, and like, I think there's a tendency. This is not calling out any fans in particular, definitely not just Falcons fans, but there's a tendency to just want to blame one person. For some people, it was Arthur Smith's fault. For some people, it was Desmond Ridder's fault. But I think there's a few people out there that think it was all Drew Dalman's fault. But whatever you got to do. But it's never just one. Now, maybe there are some interceptions where it's like, okay, that was definitely just the quarterback's fault. Like, but even on the one that I think we should put most of the blame on Ridder, which was the one that he should have just thrown out the back of the end zone that he didn't. Yep. The call came in late. The snap was late. He had to pick it up off the turf, and then he had pressure in his face. So, like, there were a lot of things that went wrong prior to Ridder throwing that thing short that were not his fault. Now, the throw itself was his fault, but you can't just vacuum out the throw like that was the only thing in the whole play. So just keep that in context, guys. But ultimately, like, I think on rewatch, Ridder was like dealing at various points in this game where there were a lot of excellent throws. There were some throws that were not connected on, like that Van Jefferson throw. But again, like, people are like, oh, Ridder overthrew it. They practiced together for like 2 days. Like, I'm surprised they threw that ball at all. I mean, like,
I'm with you.
And it was like, it was close, but it's like, I'm not expecting instant connection with a guy who just arrived in the facility. Like, I think people that don't know the game, it's like, you don't just have instant, maybe with some guys you have instant chemistry, but with almost 99% of players, it's going to take you like some time to learn where to put that ball that they can go get it. I mean,
if only we had a speedy receiver on the roster who's been here the whole time that we could have run that route with. If only.
Arthur Smith doesn't throw the ball to people that aren't at least 6'1". Okay, that's the rule.
I guess so. Goodness.
But he was open, so that's a good sign, hopefully, for the future. But then, there was the Bijan sideline bomb that you could tell Bijan's not a receiver, right?
He's still learning.
He didn't really know how to catch that one, so he went for the one-handed grab.
Yeah.
Which Would have been really cool if it worked, but yeah, I mean, you got to flip your body around and catch that one, Bijan. But again, it's like that's how much trust they have in Bijan as a receiver, that they're throwing him go routes down the sideline essentially. So, but those were, I mean, I think the Bijan one was on target certainly. So there were some missed opportunities there. I thought Ridder connected on a lot of passes that were really nice. I mean, threw for over 307 yards. You know, the 3 interceptions obviously weighed us down, but like, I don't think this was anywhere close to Ridder's worst game. I mean, if you compare this to week 4, it's complete. Like, this was closer to last week than it was to week 4.
I would agree.
So it's like, I don't think we're as like, I know people are just right back on the he's a bum, needs to be benched, like all this stuff train. Like that, I think that's the wrong takeaway from this. I think my takeaway is that this is a young offense. This is a young, mistake-prone offense that's still finding its footing. And this was another week where they just made a bunch of stupid mistakes. And I don't, and if Desmond Ridder can have these games where he's dealing, throws for 2 touchdowns, but has some picks, like that's progress from like several weeks ago where it was like, we're throwing for 150 yards and picks and no touchdowns and scoring single digits. Like, to Ridder's credit, the offense did get in position to score multiple times. They didn't do it, you know, because of the interceptions, but like they kept marching back up and down the field in that fourth quarter, which was very frustrating, obviously, to watch. But the nice thing that I think we've seen in the last 2 weeks is that the passing game has sort of come alive. It hasn't been clean necessarily, but it's come alive, and that is a big step for this team. But it just seems like it's still very far from a finished product.
Yeah, when I look at the pass game, it's good that it's come alive, but it's also a bad thing that it's had to. And the reason why I say that is because you look at it now 2 weeks in a row, where has the run game been?
Yeah.
I think this is the second week where you could look at the majority of the offensive line and say they got pushed around up front. Now, I get it. That's a good front for the Commanders, right? Like, I have to give them credit. But I think when you think of the Commanders in their front, you think more so of what they can do pass rush wise, not what they do stopping the run. So that was a bit disappointing. And even if you want to look ahead to next week, you're going to go up against Vita Vea, who, you know, he's going to probably line up a lot on Drew Dahlman and just deal one-on-one. And I told you, I'm higher on Drew Dahlman than most. But the one place where I am concerned with him is when you have pressure and size right in your face. So that's going to be a challenge. And then also, if they aren't the best inside linebacker duo in the league, they're second behind Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. But, you know, what Levante David and Devin White have been able to do for years, they are a top 2. Like I said, if not one, they're a top 2 inside linebacker duo in the league. So they're going to be flying around. You're going to have Vita Vea up front eating double teams. He's also a pretty good pass rusher, too, for as big as he is. You've got to figure some things out right now up front in terms of what's going on with this pass game. Because don't get me wrong, I'm happy to see that Desmond can throw for 300 if we have to. I still feel like the ideal situation for this offense, you get 120, 130 on the ground, and not even just the numbers, because I know we had, I think, was it 102 on the ground this game, so you weren't that far off, but still be around 4.3 yards a carry. Because that wasn't the case. If you take away Desmond Ridder's, like if you take out Desmond Ridder's 2 rushes, that you weren't close to that in this game. And then Desmond throws for about 250 to 270. You're good. I think that's the sweet spot for this offense. But as of late, you almost have to throw for 300 plus because you haven't got the run game going.
Yeah, and that's the weirdest thing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
it's just I don't understand it. Like, both 2 weeks in a row now, they've not been able to move anyone on the ground. The run blocking has just not been there, where Bijan's just having to duck and dodge guys in the backfield pretty much every snap. There's no holes being opened. It just seems like the timing of the blocks is off. Like not necessarily that they're getting pushed back into the backfield, but that like they're not hitting these like combinations that they need to set up the lane for these guys to get more than past the line of scrimmage. Because further apart, they're still pretty good at getting past the line of scrimmage, but like we've seen so many 2-yard gains in the last 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
like just barely getting past the line of scrimmage. And like, if you can get Bijan to that 3rd yard, that's probably a 10-yard run. But it's just like they haven't even been able to get that done. And it's just bizarre for this team where that was really their backbone for an entire season. And like, some of it has to do with teams selling out, right? But like last year, teams were selling out every single week and they still did it. So I don't know what's changed.
I was saying this yesterday. When you look at the complete picture of this offense, everything that you have is so much better this year than what it was last year. I love Marcus Mariota. I think Desmond Ridder is a better quarterback than Marcus. The receiving group is a lot better than what it was last year. Yet you can't, like, so you have so many other things that you have to worry about and think about, but still you can't run the ball as efficiently as last year. I mean, think about it. Like, outside of Drake London last year, I think Kaderil Hodge and Demir Bird were our other top three receivers.
Yeah.
And Olamide Zaccheaus. That's right. Right. My apologies, Olamide.
Yeah. Put some respect on the man.
I know that is a big miss by me. But like, still, like, I would gladly take Drake London, Mac Hollins, if we would ever use him, Scotty Miller. But now Van Jefferson, I would gladly take that group as what it is now over what we had last year. Where, again, everybody knew we wanted to run the ball last year.
Yeah.
He still found a way to make it happen. Remember the game against the Cleveland Browns where Marcus throws a pick? You say, all right, well, Marcus, we want to take the ball out of your hands. You run the ball, was it like 15, 16 times in a row, and they couldn't stop it?
Yeah, it scored.
So, I don't,
Beautiful.
So like, and so I don't want to hear from people saying, oh, well, people are selling out. All right, cool. Sell out if you want.
I'm not expecting you to get 6 yards per carry. Can you get 4?
I'm not exactly. But it's just like the feel right now for me is that is a finesse offensive line over in imposing offensive line.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example from my playing days. Remember when I was at Stanford, we went against the Chip Kelly Oregon teams.
Yes.
And what they love to do, they would try to move you laterally as much as possible because they wanted to go so fast, so quickly. Everybody remembers how up-tempo they were with guys like LaMichael James, DeAnthony Thomas, of course, Falcons legend, Kenyon Barner. They would, as soon as you get out of that one gap, they had the speed, boom. It's like, all right, boom, we're going to take this for 60, 70, 80 yards. Now, we saw that, and so our assignment and what our game plan was, okay, they want to go laterally. Let's hit them physically to make them go backwards. Like, don't try to go speed for speed, because if you do that, they're going to beat you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Instead, let's just hit them in the mouth, and that's going to stop all that lateral movement. And for most of our matchups against them, it worked. Mm-hmm. And so I right now, with what I see from the Falcons, it feels like we know it's an athletic group, right? Like, I definitely want to see them continue to use their athleticism, but who's the person right now that's going to show that, like, Harvey Dahl type mentality? Remember, right. we'd almost be good for a late hit a game from Harvey Dahl, but like, it sent a message, right? Tyson Clabo would send a message. Keenan Forney would send like, you would feel them. And right now, it just feels like I don't think fronts are really feeling this offensive line in the run game as much as they need to. And like I said, especially these last 2 weeks, I think that's really shown.
Yeah, I mean, and you would expect Caleb McGarry and Chris Lindstrom to be those guys. I know Bergeron was known, I mean, I thought he certainly looked like he had that level of nasty, but like, you don't expect necessarily a rookie to be doing that right off the bat.
He shouldn't lead it. Yeah.
He's just getting his feet wet. He's getting his head on straight going out there. And to his credit, I think he's been fine. Like, he has not been a liability. But it's just, I think Jake Matthews is slowing down a little bit. Again, getting into those mid-30s, it's going to happen. You have to sort of overcome that with technique. And I think he's capable of doing that, but it's an adjustment for him being one of the more athletic left tackles in the league in his heyday. But like, I think this is where like Caleb McGarry and Chris Lindstrom, like, you guys have to be the engine on that right side that we can go crush teams. And maybe Caleb McGarry this week was still dealing with the repercussions of his knee injury. Maybe he wasn't 100%. I don't know. And Lindstrom has been playing better, but it's like Lindstrom can't do it by himself. And
exactly.
I think the snap issues contribute too a little bit, where you're not getting a clean snap off. You're not getting the ball to the running back as quickly. Now the running back has a half second less to read.
Time's a little
play.
off, yeah.
And so there's just little things, but it all just reeks to me of like, this is like an offense. It looks like a young offense. It's just not gelled. Like I think the timing of stuff seems off. It's just like a step short. And this is what I kept saying about Ridder, like early on, was like, he just seems like a tick behind where he needs to be. And I think, to be fair, like I think his timing has gotten a lot better over the last 2 weeks. Like he looks more comfortable. The mistakes haven't necessarily gone fully away yet. Hopefully we'll get there, but it just seems like everything's a tick off right now. And thankfully I think it's just a tick off, but it's not working the way it should be. And I know it's obvious to everyone that watches the games that it's not working the way it should be, and I think maybe part of the problem too is like, and this is more of like a meta discussion, but like the defense is so good that I think now it's like the pressure's on the offense to be like if the defense was bad still, it would be like, oh, well, the team is just not there yet. Like everything's coming together, whatever. But because the defense is like playoff caliber, like ready to go, now the pressure's on the offense to be like, okay, well, this should be a team that's winning 10 plus games, no question. Because before the question was like, can the defense become average? Now the question is, can the offense become average because the defense is like top 5? So I think that's ratcheted up the pressure on the offense a lot more than I think folks were expecting at this point in the process.
Yeah, that's a fair take. And I definitely agree with it. I would just take it another level up in terms of, you have an offensive-minded head coach.
Yeah.
The pressure was always going to be on the offense to get things done. Just off that alone. Like I was saying yesterday, your team is supposed to be a reflection of who your head coach is, right? So even the year that the Falcons went to the Super Bowl, 2016 season, it took a while for the defense to find that groove. And once they did, though, it was beautiful. And I know everyone's going to remember the offense for what they did that year, and it was historic, don't get me wrong. But the defense was very good down the stretch of that season. And even going into 2017, you had a really good defense that year, too. Well, Dan Quinn was your head coach. That was partially what you were looking to see. It's a great D coordinator, what he did with the Seahawks. You wanted to see that carry over to what he was doing as a head coach. So I'm saying that to say now with Arthur Smith, again, offensive-minded guy, so you're always going to want to see and hope that the offense looks a certain kind of way. Now I agree with you too from the standpoint of that, the defense looking good, it puts more pressure. But I also put it this way: the defense is looking good, at least from the coaching standpoint. The defense looks good of a guy that just got here, right? Like Ryan Nielsen wasn't day one hire when Arthur Smith took the job. Remember, that was Dean Pease. So It's someone who just got here. You're in year 3, and this unit's already looking better than what your unit's looking like. That also, I think, plays something into it too, in terms of the fan standpoint. Like, wait a minute, how did he just get in here this quickly and have it look like this? And we still have all these questions about what you're doing and how your unit looks like.
So yeah, I mean, it's very much, I agree. It's like we expect more from the offense, I think, for a lot of reasons, and that's one of the biggest ones. Is that, look, this is supposed to be your baby, Arthur Smith. You're supposed to be the mastermind. So why are we not there? And especially like the run game stuff, like, because the passing game, I think we were all a little bit more questioning, like, okay, maybe he does need help with the passing game. Maybe we should be getting a passing game coordinator in here in the offseason. And I think we'll still have that discussion at the end of the year, depending on how this shakes out. And I think he would just be wise to consider it anyway, just from a, improving whatever you can angle to stuff. But like the run game can't be having problems like that. That was always his biggest selling point. So like we got to get that figured out. And it's certainly not going to get any easier this week against the Bucs, who are right where the Falcons are in terms of the run defense. Now, I'll give the Falcons credit. They seem to sort of play to the quality of their opponent. So, like, they've actually had some of their better, like, run games against teams that were actually pretty good at defending the run, and they've had some like the Commanders were terrible at defending the run, and they had like one of their worst games. So I don't really know how to explain that. So we'll see if the Falcons can get this going. But huge game coming up this week against Tampa, for basically what will be first place in the division. If the Falcons win this game, they will have control of first place in the division. They'll have a 2-0 NFC South record. They'll have a head-to-head win over the Bucs, and the chance to sweep, because if they win this, they'll have just to play them at home, where the Falcons theoretically are better. And also they'll have a chance to, Ridder's home streak got broken. So can we break the road streak too? That would be nice. But mostly they just got to.
It was a week of. It was just like around the league. It was a week of streak breaking. All of a sudden, everyone thinks Brock Purdy is human again because he lost the regular season game. The Eagles lost. I mean, just no matter what you look at, it was just one of those weeks.
It was a sloppy week all around. Like the Eagles lost to the Jets. I think a lot of people didn't realize that. Jalen Hurts,
Tyrod Taylor almost beats the Bills.
Yep. So it was kind of a weird week. But look, the Falcons, they got to find a way to start winning games like that they should win. Like they should have beat the Commanders. They outplayed them.
Agreed.
So they, the Bucs are, I think, are a tougher test. So can they now beat them? Can they beat the Bucs? Because if they beat the Bucs, then they go into a 3-game stretch where they're probably expecting to win 2 of the next 3, if not 3 of the next 3, if you're being really generous to yourself. But let's see it. This week, let's see it. So
yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, look, 3-1 at minimum needs to be the expectation going into the bye week.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. I mean, if they beat the Bucs, then I think we'll be expecting them to go 3-0 over the next.
Then you go 4-0.
Yeah. But I mean, the Titans look pretty much lifeless, other than Derrick Henry, and the Falcons are good at stopping the run. The Vikings are, the Vikings.
And what was the deal with? Well, I mean, even when I look at availability, I don't know what the case is with Tannehill. I know he got hurt. In the London game, so you might have to go against another young quarterback in that one. I believe Justin Jefferson will still be on IR.
That's right.
When you play the Vikings, so you're looking at a stretch here where there's no excuse, in my opinion, to lose games. I mean, even the Cardinals. Like, I'll give the Cardinals this: their run attack is better than what I expected. Yeah. Now, that being said, James Conner has been out, so that also plays a hurt on things. It's part of the reason why they lost, this week against the Rams. But still, looking at that game,
they're not a joke. Yeah, they're not a joke.
Yeah, they're not a joke, but still, I'd say for this team, this Falcons team, and what they want to do, no excuse to lose that game either.
Yeah,
and then because again, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the schedule. And it just bothers me so much right now that we're 3-3.
Yeah.
Because looking at it, I mean, at first when the schedule first came out, you'd say it was Aaron Rodgers, right? Week 13 against the Jets. Mm-hmm. The best quarterback you're going to play this year, at least in the regular season, is Jared Goff.
Yeah.
Like that's I think part of the frustrating thing of being 3-3 right now. But
yeah,
especially going down the stretch. And I know some people are saying Kirk Cousins. Well, I'm also, let me put the caveat in terms of you're facing Kirk Cousins without Justin Jefferson. So there's that caveat with it too. Like, don't get me wrong, Kirk Cousins, I think he's a solid quarterback. But in terms of the weaponry and then also QB ability, I think the best quarterback you're facing this year is Jared Goff. So
it's really just on the offense.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, the next 4 weeks, like we said, this is what we're talking about. Baker Mayfield, maybe Ryan Tannehill, if not, it's Malik Willis, Kirk Cousins, again, without his best receiver, and Josh Dobbs.
Yep.
3-1 has to be, at minimum, what you do in these next 4 weeks.
Yeah. At least give us a good game against the Bucs. Like, if you don't win it on the road, that's fine. But, look like you belong in the same conversation as the Bucs, so there's going to be problems.
And I mean, to that point, and I'll even quote Arthur Smith from what he said in this press conference. The whole we did it against Tampa and the Rams last year. Well, here's the thing: last year, if we want to make comparisons to this year versus last year, you were in the game against Tampa last year, and I'm talking about when we were on the road which you had the horrible roughing the passer call against Grady Jarrett late.
Yep.
But you were right there with them, and they had a better quarterback, right? Talking about Tom Brady. So if you were with them last year, your team is better this year. It's time to make a statement in this division. Like people still want to know and have questions, as I do too. Who's going to stand out in the NFC South? Who's going to be that team? If you beat Tampa on the road, you have a better. You take a step to say maybe it's the Falcons. Then obviously you got to do it against the Saints too. Like coming into the year, I said you got to sweep Carolina. If you go 1-1 with Tampa and the Saints, you will be fine. Go 4-2 in the division, you'll be in a good spot. But shoot, go ahead and sweep Tampa too. Like go beat them on the road. Why not? So
yeah,
go ahead and make that statement. But again, it's going to start up front. Push some people around. Don't let them push you around. Stop trying to look and be cute in the trenches. That's not a cute position. Let's push some people around instead of getting pushed around like we have the last few weeks.
Yeah. So that's what they need to do. They need to prove that they're the best team in the NFC South, and the way to do that is by beating the team that most people think is the best team in the NFC South. So let's go do it. Like, this is the month like where you have to get your shit together. Like October is the month where you figure out if you're going to get your shit together or if this is just who you are.
Agreed.
So I will say that I think the offense the last 2 weeks has definitely been more productive than it has been for many of the previous weeks, and that's a good sign. Now you just have to stop making the mistakes on top of it. Like if you cut those interceptions out, you're probably winning this game by double digits. So
interceptions and those penalties that just hit at the worst times.
Yep, and you can't just take those out, obviously, but you need to do it, and that they're getting closer. Yeah. Now we just need to see it actually happen. So I'm still keeping the faith, and I think you are too. But it has to happen like soon. It has to happen soon. Like you bought yourself some room with your early wins. Now you're back to 500. You need to not drop below 500, or there's going to be problems. So maybe you could afford it, and then you win the next 3. But like, just let's not even have that conversation. Let's just beat the Bucs this week and go from there. So
1000%.
All right. Well, Jordan, thank you so much, guys. Appreciate everyone for watching us today. Make sure to like, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, or leave us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Today's show was brought to you by Bet Online, and my co-host is Jordan Watkins at Big75 Fella. Jordan, tell the people where they can find you elsewhere and anything else that you're working on.
You can find me again on the Falcon Fade podcast. We do a recap show. I think it's actually airing right about now in the Atlanta area. And then also we'll do a preview that goes out on Saturdays. Clint Goss and I, it's a fun time doing it. He does a great job of being prepared, ready to go. So check that out. If you live in the Bay Area, you want to see some high school football. I've been coaching at Skyline High School up in Oakland. That's been a bunch of fun. Those kids, they work my nerves, but there's so much fun to coach and be with on a weekly basis. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. So definitely check Jordan out, guys. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Make sure to join us on Wednesday night for the next episode of Falcoholic Live. And then, of course, we'll be back with the game preview after that, and then right on into the next game. So Falcons, this is your official, warning to get your shit together. Okay. Like this is the time. Now we need to do it. We got division game.
Don't make me lose my voice again.
Yeah. We got a division game coming up. So this is the time to get your shit together. So
don't make me lose my voice again, Falcons.
Look at what you've done to Jordan. Look at what you've done to this man.
It was my first game this week as D coordinator. We only gave up 7 points, so shout out to the defense. The only bad news is we scored 0 on offense, so it's tough to win that way. But
it's not your fault.
So I had to yell on Friday. I talked all day Saturday. I was working in a football event for a youth league. And then I was yelling on Sunday. So please don't make me lose my voice again.
Yeah, let this man rest. This man have some fun, some enjoyment. So also it would be good if I could have that too. So thanks, guys. But thanks guys for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Dirty Birds and Brews. Until then, have a great day, folks. We'll see you then.